All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, as the New York Mets enjoyed one of their best regular seasons in franchise history, they entered the playoffs with optimism. But that optimism soon faded as the Mets found themselves going home after the wild card round. Now, the San Diego Padres were too much for the Mets, who sent the 101 win team home by taking 2 out of 3 from the Mets at Citi Field in Queens. To me, the tone of this series was set in game number one when an ineffective Max Scherzer gave up 7 earned runs in 4+ innings in game number one of this series. The Mets lost that contest 7-1. We saw New York rebound on Saturday night at home when Jacob Degrom gave them 6 solid innings as the Mets forced a game three with a 7-3 win. But all that did was delay the inevitable, as last night we saw Padres starting pitcher Joe Musgrove channel his inner Jack Morris as he shut down the Mets for 7 innings. And when it was all said and done, New York was only able to muster one single hit during the 6-0 shutout loss. Now that the season has come to an end for the Mets, I guarantee you that the finger pointing and the questions and second guessing are going to begin. One thing I will say is this: Max Scherzer was not healthy coming down the stretch. We saw Scherzer go on the injured list. He came back, and you could clearly see that he was not Max Scherzer. He was trying to gut it out. The Mets needed him out there, but honestly, 70 or 75% of Max Scherzer wasn't going to get it done, and it showed. The Braves got him in that last regular season matchup between those two NL East foes, and then the Padres just picked up where the Braves left off from, and when it was all said and done, Scherzer couldn't get it done. And I'll ask anybody, the way that Scherzer pitched coming down the stretch of the regular season and in the wild card game in game number one, uh, if the Mets had advanced, just for the sake of argument, what was he going to do? Because he's already injured, and trying to play through it is not going to make it better, especially at this point of the season. Scherzer probably needed a rehab for a couple of weeks and rest. And honestly, I'll tell you like this: Scherzer really didn't have an off season last year because he was one of the lead guys at the bargaining table with the owners during the lockout period. So yes, he's an older pitcher, but it's going to be interesting to see how he rebounds coming into 2023. The Mets also failed to get another power bat and another starting pitcher, quality starting pitcher, just prior to the trade deadline. But honestly, it's no fault of their own because the game has changed. And I say that because with the expanded postseason, you're going to have more teams that are going to go out there and really feel like they have a chance to get to the postseason. So, with that said, you're not going to have as many sellers at the deadline like we've seen in years past. And there were some teams that I really felt should have waved the white flag. They didn't. But you know what? You can't make a team trade if they don't want to, which means going forward, the impetus is going to be on the winter meetings because that's going to be where teams are going to make deals, whether it's trades and, of course, obviously free agents. But nonetheless, that is going to be the sticking point going forward where teams are going to have to make moves, not the trade deadline like it has been in years past. The Mets, and I know some people may not want to hear this, but this team overachieved this season. They were a 77 win team in 2021. They improved that win total by 101 games. But at the end of the day, the attitude, if you will, has changed. And it starts with Steve Cohen because fans are now anticipating and expecting success with this team. And I know some people are not going to want to hear this. I know there are going to be people that are going to disagree with me. This was still a successful season if you're the Mets. I know that some people are going to say that this team collapsed coming down the stretch. The Mets didn't collapse. The bottom line is the Atlanta Braves were just a better team. At the end of the day, in baseball, you don't win 101 games by accident. The Mets actually finished with the same record as the Braves. Obviously, there's no more, extra game, if you will, to see who the division winner is. You go based off the season series. The Braves won that season series 10-9, of course, due in large part to taking the last three from the Mets just before the end of the regular season. The Mets were still a good team, even when they lost that 10.5 game lead to the Braves. The Braves were just better. That's all it comes down to. So the Mets season in a whole was a success. But at the end of the day, you got 12 teams entering the postseason. Only one team is going to finish the year by winning their last game. So if you want to, some people are still going to say it's a failure. That's all on them. But honestly, for my money, the Mets went out there and they took care of their business. It's just the fact that they could not get it done in the wild card round against the Padres. You want to talk about this? This is just the fourth time in franchise history that the Mets were able to win at least 100 games. And I know that there are going to be some people out there that are going to say, well, the Mets just became the first team to win 100 plus games and not get to the divisional round. Guess what? That is going to keep happening due to the expanded postseason. We saw the San Francisco Giants last year win 107 games. They didn't get out of the divisional round. Why? Because they lost to a Los Angeles Dodgers team that themselves won 106 games, but they had to go to the wild card round. Remember, it's not based on your record, it's based on divisions and then seeding. So if we're talking about records overall, obviously the Mets probably wouldn't have been in this situation, but nonetheless, it is what it is. The Mets as a whole, they have a lot of questions to answer going into the offseason. But the thing is, for this franchise, unlike years past, the tenor has changed because you have an owner and Steve Cohen, and it's clearly shown, guess what? I'm willing to spend the coin to make this team better, whatever it takes. He says he's already said the heck with the luxury tax. He's going to go out there and do it. And I know that there are going to be some people that say, well, he spent all of this money and obviously no World Series, or you can't buy a World Series. I totally get all of that. But guess what? It takes time. Even if you have an owner like Cohen that is willing to spend the dime to go out there and win, it still takes time. He's had less than 5 years, um, uh, probably closer to 2 years right now, as far as being the full time owner of this team. He's still getting his people in there in the front office, but he has shown a commitment to success and to build a winner, to change a culture within an organization takes time. But guess what? This organization, not just this team, this organization is definitely headed in the right direction, in my opinion. Now, my whole thing is this: they got a lot of questions heading into the offseason if you're the Mets. First and foremost, will Jacob Degrom be back? Degrom has the ability to opt out of his contract, and I think he is. I mean, he's 34 years of age. This is going to be his last chance to cash in big at the major league level. I'll say this: if the Grom is not in a Mets uniform next year, it's going to be because he does not want to be there. Obviously, Cohen is going to give him a substantial offer to stay, but also there are going to be other teams that are going to court him in regards to having his services for next season. The Mets are going to give him a lucrative deal. It's just the ball are going to be in Jacob DeGrom's court as far as whether or not that he wants to stay in Queens. Edwin Diaz, we saw the closer for the Mets this year have a phenomenal season, and he was a big reason why the Mets were able to win as many games as they did. I know a lot of people had the whole excitement with Timmy Trumpet. I'm sure some people, there were naysayers about it with the whole thing, but again, you know what? I think that whole Trumpet aspect is Cohen's way of showing, you know what? We're not just in the in business, we're also in the sports entertainment business. And the bottom line is he had people coming out to the game. So I think he's going to make a strong push to keep Diaz. And again, I think it's going to be a scenario with Diaz. If he leaves, it's because he wants to. Chris Bassett had a phenomenal season as the third starter for the Mets this year. And again, he filled in a lot because remember, Degrom missed a good chunk of this season with an injury, and Bassett was a solid arm in this rotation behind Max Scherzer throughout the majority of the season. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Mets do in regards to bringing him back. Brandon Nimmo, former first round pick of the Mets. He's been a solid guy. He's not an all-star player. He hustles, he does everything right, and he plays hard. So let's see how the Mets are going to approach bringing him back for next season. Steve Cohen, he's getting his footing, if you will, as the owner of this team. Remember, took over the full ownership of this club late in 2020. And I mean, late after the season was over. Really didn't have an opportunity to have a full off season heading into 2021, if you will, under his watch. The Mets won 77 games that year. We saw what could happen when he had a full off season to get his people in there. Brought in his manager and Buck Showalter. Buck still knows how to get it done as a manager in the big league level. Of course, people are always going to question what Buck has been unable to do in the postseason. But nonetheless, Buck is definitely a guy that can get you to the regular season, and he knows how to have his team prepared on a daily basis. So obviously, Buck is not going anywhere. Let's just see what the roster looks like for him heading into next season. Now, of course, Billy Epler in this front office for the Mets. What's going to be next? I mean, Sandy Alderson is stepping down as the team's president of baseball ops. He's going to be around in an advisory capacity. And Cohen, the rumors are that Cohen's looking to get somebody from the business world to be that president of baseball ops going forward. But nonetheless, Epler knows that he has a green light to go out there and get it done, bring in his baseball people, and let's see what's going to happen. So it's going to be one of those. Obviously, the offseason is beginning for the Mets much quicker than they expected it to. But sometimes at the end of the day, that's the nature of the beast. We saw Francisco Lindor have a solid season after he was somewhat of a disappointment in 2021 with the Mets. Pete Alonso continues to be a power bat in the middle of this lineup. But I said it at the trade deadline, the Mets need protection behind him. They went out there and they tried to piece it together with guys like Darren Ruff and Daniel Vogelback. And, Darren Ruff never got it going for the Mets. Vogelback did have a stretch upon arriving to the Mets, but he was never the same player like that. And honestly, the numbers don't lie as far as what these guys were. So these are going to be interesting points with the Mets heading into the offseason. One thing for sure, Cohen is not afraid to go out there and make a splash. And he's done it so far. He acquired Lindor from Cleveland, signed him to a mega deal. He went out there and brought in Buck Showalter to manage this team. I know that there are going to be people, the rumors have already started. Are the Mets going to go out after Aaron Judge? I don't know. I mean, could they be in the mix? We'll have to wait and see. There's going to be several teams I really do feel that are going to be in the mix for the services of Judge. But the bottom line is the Mets need another bat, but they also need to shore up their pitching as well. A lot of questions heading into this off season for this club, but make no mistake about it, it's got to be frustrating for this team. It's darn sure frustrating for this fan base right now that their season is ending. Now they're not getting to the divisional round. They really felt like they could have made a better run to the World Series, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. You had 3 games to get it done in the playoffs against the Padres. San Diego was simply the better team for that 3-game set. And honestly, in the regular season, San Diego had taken 4 out of 6 from the Mets anyway. But nonetheless, the offseason is here for the Mets. I expect this team to be very active over the next couple of months. And let's see what the Metropolitans look like heading into spring training in early 2023. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you are on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There is also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.